Good morning, all.
Morning.
And as you can see, I sort of represent the Salem Rotary Club. We're happy that you could join this tour this morning. A restoration project is continuing, as you can tell, maybe by the looks of the gravestone, our wall. Picture, if you will, the lot in front between here and 22 filled with brush so that the cemetery wasn't visible from Route 22. The stone wall falling apart, grass overgrowing in the cemetery. So a lot has taken place. In the fall of 2017, the Rotary Club got permission from the historian and the town of Salem to take on a community project of stone cleaning. And so we started. We needed to raise some money, and as it happened, some of the material was available from a cleaning project going on at the Holy Cross Cemetery here in Salem. And so we purchased some of that material, the Rotary Club did, and we got started. During the winter, the historian wrote a grant to the Alfred Solomon Trust, and they gave us $4,000. We spent about $6,000, so the community raised quite a lot, and we still need more. The cleaning project is complete. We volunteered about 180 hours of mostly Rotarians, but others came along and helped. And we used a product called D2. Now, I'm not promoting this product, but it works well. I'm not connected with the company. It's made by Lime Works out of Telford, Pennsylvania. And it's about $40 a gallon, and we used 130 gallons of material. So you can tell that it's not a cheap thing to do. But anyway, it looks nice now, and I hope you all will enjoy the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, the repair of what you see now took place over a number of years because we could only repair as much as we had money for. And that was back in the late 1990s and the early 20,000 years. But the walls that you see, all the walls that are all done, the south wall is not done. It is in fairly good shape. The west wall is a disaster, and sometime we'll get to attack that wall and repair it. Right now we're working on the stones.
We've also started straightening some of the stones. We had a professional in here showing us how to actually get them out so they're nice and straight also. We got a few done.
Presented today. And the Stockbridge Indians were very friendly with the pioneers of Salem at that time. And he wandered in one day, according to the history books, wandered in one day and was ill. And unfortunately did not survive. But he is buried someplace in this cemetery. There was never a stone put up for him, but he's in an unknown grave. But the historical materials that we have say he was the first burial in this cemetery and so honored by the pioneers of that time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome. It's nice to see life in the cemetery. It can get pretty dead around here. But we're glad you could come out on this beautiful day. Can you hear me okay?
What? Fine.
Just raise your hand. I'm familiar with that gesture. Raise your hand and I will be happy to speak up. Good morning. I am Dinah Dick Conkey. My husband Joshua and I were some of the very first settlers to settle in this beautiful area. They called me the matriarch of Salem as I got older, of course, which tickled me, but I never let on. They didn't realize that that nickname was as accurate as, it sounded, because I was also the one that gave birth to the very first child in this area, my son Joshua. Now you might wonder how we came to be in this beautiful part of the world. Well, my husband was part of the militia in Rogers Rangers, and they were tasked with the job of checking on the various forts that were being built around the area. And so their job was to travel from Fort Edward to Fort Anne up to Fort Carillon, which you now know as Fort Ticonderoga. When they got up to Fort Ticonderoga, there was a very serious battle between the French and Indian and Robert's Rangers. Thankfully, Joshua was not killed, but he was captured and he was taken to Canada, where he was held prisoner. His father petitioned for his release, and after time, and after being tortured and treated poorly, he was able to return to us. He met up with his friends Turner and McAllister, and they decided that they'd remembered this beautiful area in White Creek, and they wanted to return here to settle. And so they came to Pelham and they pitched their idea, so we decided that that's what we were going to do. And as our home was being built, we stayed in Pelham, particularly during the winter months. And once our permanent home was established, we moved to this area. At that time, as I said, I gave birth to our son, and we began our family. I had 15 children. But living in the wilderness is difficult, and we were fortunate that 6 made it to adulthood. Their descendants are in the area today, which is wonderful. After the French and Indian War, and children, the English decided that they were going to start taxing us. And as you know, the troubles began. Joshua was made quartermaster of this area, and it was his job to supply active military soldiers with provisions. I did a lot of baking, let me tell you. It was my job to bake the bread for the soldiers that were in active duty. Joshua was very proud the day that they actually set a guard on the kitchen when it was baking day, so that there was no snitching, which was pretty exciting. We had some unrest in the area. There were alarms that were sounded, gunshots, if they thought that an army was going to be marching through, and we would evacuate, we would leave. Well, one day the alarm was sounded and everybody left. But I had a big bowl of bread raising, and I was not about to let it spoil. So Mistress McAllister and I decided that we were going to stay, and if evacuation was necessary, our husbands would come to our aid. It was a false alarm. Somebody was chasing their pigs in the field, made the field wave about, and they sounded the alarm. I got my bread baked that day, I'll tell you. In August of 1777, however, the evacuation call was real. Burgoyne was coming down with those bloody lobster backs, and we needed to leave. We got ready, we started to pack up all of our children, all of our things so that we could leave, and our daughter Mary came down with the measles. At that time, I was also nursing our baby Eunice. There was no way that our children would survive if we evacuated. The remaining children we sent on with the good people of White Creek to evacuate, and we stayed here. That was the Battle of Bennington. I baked a lot of bread. At the end of it, they called me a hero. I did what needed to be done. In 1792, after a short illness at the age of 54, I passed away. My husband Joshua was very upset, and he hired Zerubbabel Collins to come and carve my stone. But he also had children to raise and a house to run. He remarried a Miss Sears from Vermont and lived another 22 years. But his wish was to be next to me. Thank you for coming. And eat your bread.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
What a beautiful day. My name is Hamilton McAllister, and I was born on the 3rd of March in 1742 in Salem County, New Jersey. And this place wasn't called Salem at the time, as Dinah has alluded to. After the French and Indian War, I was one of the three original settlers to the area, along with James Turner and Joshua Conkey. We liked the looks of this area and remembered how beautiful it was. And it looked a lot different than it does nowadays. There were these huge white pines that grew in the area all down the floor of the valley along the creeks, and a very, very beautiful place. And we came from Pelham, Massachusetts, and explored the area and kind of staked out where we wouldn't mind living. And over the course of a few years, we would come here and work in the good weather and go back to Massachusetts for the winters. And travel wasn't as easy as it is today. There wasn't any paved roads or turnpikes and throughways, and horseback and cart was a lot slower than what people are used to today. In about 1764, I built one of the original structures, a log cabin pretty much to the east of here, near the area where the courthouse is today, along the creek, along White Creek. And we helped each other build our shelters and our cabins. And I married a wonderful woman by the name of Sarah Dick, who happened to be Dinah Dick Conkey's sister. So we had connections here, family connections. Around 1776, I built a frame structure to the southwest of here. I'm not sure which way you folks have traveled in and are traveling out today, but the intersection of Route 22 and Route 29 and Hanks Road, there's a larger house and a smaller structure in back of it, again on the banks of White Creek, and that was the structure that I built in 1776. It still stands. And after the war for independence, in 1785, I built a larger structure in front of that, which is still standing. I was a farmer, and we raised sheep and chickens and the various animals. Flax was big. We used that for clothing and different materials. And we raised corn. And with 8 children, that was mighty helpful on the farm, as you can imagine. We didn't have the modern farming conveniences that people have today. There was a lot of hand labor, and life was hard. I worked very hard for what we had, and the aforementioned war, I was a major in the Charlotte County Militia underneath Colonel John Williams, and this whole area was Charlotte County. It wasn't Washington County at the time. Charlotte County was named after one of the royals from the old country, and after the War of Independence, which we won, we renamed many of the areas around here for our heroes of the war. So Washington County came about after that. I lived to the ripe old age of about 84, 85, and I passed away in 1825 and have been here ever since. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, whichever. My name is Lloyd Stewart. I'm from Albany, New York. I'm a third generation Albanian, and I am a ninth generation New York Stater. My family has been in New York State since the 1750s. So my family has been in North America longer than the United States of America has been in existence, which is a good thing. So when people say, go back to where you came from, I come to Washington County. Okay. I wanted to, part of my family is broken up. Some of them are buried here, and some you'll see are buried in the Evergreen Cemetery, as we'll go to next. But interestingly enough, my great grandmother, Sally Van Branken, wife of Samuel Van Branken, died at the age of 68 years old. She had 7 children, her and Samuel. She was buried, as you can see here, in the Revolutionary War Cemetery. Her death notice from Washington County's People's Journal states that on January 5th, 1854 to December 30th, pages 206, that's how it's listed in the microfiche that I get. Van Branken Sally, about 68 years, wife of Samuel, in Salem, New York, April 22nd, 1861. Buried in the Revolutionary War Cemetery in Salem, New York. Her stone is inscribed, Sally, wife of Samuel Van Branken, died April 22nd, 1861, at the age of 69. Now, I've been researching my family since about 2000, the year 2000, with my grandmother, who at the time was 93 years old. And I figured that we needed to sit down and put our family history together as she was getting older. She was not ill, she was very spry and very flexible, if you will. Let me introduce as I go along. My brother Arthur is here. You raise your hand. my brother Tim. My wife.
They're behind you.
Behind you.
My wife Mitzi, and my niece Lauren.
Yeah.
With a Y. Okay, they came with us today. This is their first time coming up. I've come up a number of times to Salem and have met with Al Comier and also with Joseph Cutshaw King. They've been very helpful in terms of us being able to put our family history together. And now I'm hoping the same will happen with Judy as we go along and try and document the family. We've been able to go back on paper to 1810, where our family was involved in the Presbyterian Church in Cambridge, if any of you are familiar with that. They were all baptized there. Now, Sally, we were not able to find Sally's maiden name, but she was born in Albany, New York. Okay? The interesting thing about Sally, what we were able to do though is through DNA testing, the mitochondrial testing, that goes from mother to daughter to mother to daughter to mother to daughter, found that Sally's African ancestry is a nation in Cameroon that's called the Tikar. That at one point in time in the 1300s was a very powerful nation, state. And so we're now able to put our family back in Africa. where we are, where the big question mark is, because there's always a question mark with families of African descent. The big question mark is, how did they get from Cameroon to Washington County? Okay? And that is the part which I'm still trying to put together. Oh, excuse me. In addition to Sally being buried here in the Revolutionary Cemetery, her daughter, Mary Matilda, her stone says, daughter of Samuel and Sally Van Branken, wife of James Burke, died 10 April 1861 at the age of 29 years old. In addition to Matilda and Sally, we have Matilda's son, Samuel, who was born, or who died on November 1868 at the age of 17 years old. In addition, we have Catherine Burke here, daughter of James and Mary Matilda Burke, who died on August 30th, 1857, at the age of 4 years old. I have here pictures when I came in 2002 of these two grave sites. I didn't realize at the time that Catherine and Samuel were part of our family. I was still putting the pieces together, but it's convenient and it's nice that we're all together here in this one spot. Now, the proximity of the dates of Sally and Mary Matilda's Van Branken's deaths are 12 days apart. And we figured that may be due to some type of contagious disease that was commonly spread throughout New York State during that time period. So I want to thank you all for listening to me about this part of my family. We will be meeting more of my family when we go to the Evergreen Cemetery, and there is a very, very interesting story about they're buried in the African grounds in Evergreen Cemetery, and there's a very interesting story, mystery story, something that you could put on TV and have, you know, somebody like Columbo or somebody figure out the thing, but with the help of Al Comier, we were able to figure out this mystery. So be prepared. And thank you very much for letting me speak about my family today.
So nice of you to visit us here today at the Revolutionary Cemetery. My name is Margaret Telford. I was born in Scotland in 1725, married my beloved George. We had 5 children, and then we heard of Dr. Clark coming over here and spreading the word of the United Presbyterian Church. So we followed him. He had bought 12,000 acres here in the Salem area. It was not known as Salem at the time, but we settled out where there was not good farmland. And I have to tell you that the New England Presbyterians and the United Presbyterians didn't enjoy their freedom right away because they had different beliefs. My poor husband George went through a lot. We were devout, God-fearing, and people spread horrible words about me being a witch. And I relish this time to try to reckon those myths. One of our neighbors, Mr. Livingston, had problems with his cows. He said his cream wouldn't turn to butter, and he blamed me for being a neighbor, that I cast spells on that. I was just a peaceful person trying to bring up our 5 children. And I found out later the reason why it wouldn't turn to butter was that his cows had eaten some tainted mushrooms. And they just started all kinds of trouble. So also my beloved George saw someone split wood in front of their house, which doesn't sound like a bad thing, does it? But it was on Sunday. It was on Sunday. I had to go tell Reverend Clark about that. And then they found out that I did that. I'm telling you that what we went through, I would rather throw myself in front of a stagecoach than have anyone else go through what a terrible life we had. And we were even known as Tories. Can you imagine? Tories. We wouldn't do that. We had to go to Fort Edward to seek refuge when the Revolutionary got so bad around here. And we did not. We were not for the Queen. We were for freedom. And I regret what we had to go through, and I understand now what anyone from a minority goes through in these days. It's really sad. We had real dark places in our times, and you know, it was so hard to just find enough food. The land out there, East Broadway, was not good farmland, which I think a lot of people found out, and all we could have was sheep, and that was a very hard life. And I hope some of you can understand what we went through. Does it sound like some people these days are going through the same thing? Not being called witches, but being let down by their neighbors. And my poor George, he was just trying to take care of our family, and where it was necessary, he did have to tell Reverend Clark about that. It was his duty, wasn't it? And I appreciate you folks stopping by today and listening. Thank you very much.